Nunesdea facilitator from the IAF, which stands for International Association of Facilitators. Since 2018, I've started a book series on architecting collaboration, and my latest book, in co-authorship with Martin Duffy and other renowned digital facilitators and guest co-authors, is titled Beyond Virtual Meetings. It's all about the importance of the digital tools that can extend and augment the power of you as a facilitator and a meeting host in virtual online meetings, but also on the hybrid meetings that are going to be so much needed in this post-pandemic era. Along with my co-author Martin Duffy and esteemed PhD colleague, we host Talk to Your Meeting Daughters, a series of hosted conversations with meeting experts that can advise you about how to transition to this new normal and take advantage of this incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make the organization of your meetings more sustainable and effective. Please stand by as the next show will start momentarily.
Because I think at the end of the conversation, it's certainly in my mind, it's left me with a massive amount more things that you would now want to explore, delve into, consider than certainly what I had in my mind when we started the conversation. Ilke, you started with the concept of real-time analysis by AI, and that analysis could be done thematically, through summaries, through filtering, through identifying concerns, and so on. We talked then about the possibility of AI being able to support the engagement of significantly bigger numbers, 50, 80, 100, 150 people, where it can keep track of considerably more data than the normal human participant or facilitator. I suppose what that leads to, and Jim, I think you picked this one up, was the idea that maybe our whole concept of what it means to meet needs to shift. But that would have to be qualified by a point that Karen and Ilke made, which is that while we may not like meetings, as humans, we absolutely not only like to meet, I think, but we need to meet. That's part of the human condition. Jim, you raised the point that if we don't meet, how do we have community? How do we have organizations? How do we have groups? How do we have teams? So the picture emerging from our conversation is that AI has this possibility to act as a fly on the wall. I think I introduced the phrase fly on the wall. It has that possibility not to take over the meeting, but actually to add to the meeting something that we humans actually can't add to the meeting. We can't step back from the totality of the conversation that's taking place. We can't analyze that totality in real time. AI can do that. And then it can feed back into the conversation. And Ilke, your point just towards the end of our discussion was maybe it can feed back in with a judicious question, with a thought-provoking question, with a summarizing question that can help to bring focus back, not to where AI decides the focus should be, but where AI has analyzed our content and said, here's the breakdown, here's the weighting, here's the emotion, and when we put it together algorithmically, here's the conclusion that you guys are reaching, not that AI is reaching. But that then brings us to, I suppose, I raised the point about security and the concept of if we're all being recorded, if that recording is being retained, and the purpose or role to which that recording is put in the short future or even in the long future, do we end up needing to protect and preserve that through some form of legislative framework? Jim, you raised the point that, well, perhaps organization norms, culture, standing operating procedures, guidelines, perhaps they can help us here. But it also begs the question that if people use AI output nefariously, then does it expose people to the point where they stop contributing themselves or of themselves out of concern that they may be misrepresented at a later date because that recording is there? And Ilke, you made the point that transcripts of the recordings are even more risky because they're now searchable. And so there's a big question there that we've touched on, but we haven't explored or we haven't bottomed it out. The overall conclusion that I'm drawing from our conversation so far is actually AI won't make meetings obsolete because we're humans, we're going to continue meeting. However, AI has a very strong possibility of completely transforming what we mean by meetings. And we all might just need to go back to the drawing board to say, well, what do we want meetings to be in light of the fact that we have this ear fly on the wall who can do so much more that we can't? And then we can ask ourselves, okay, how might we change our meetings in order to make maximum use of this all listening fly on the wall? But we very quickly moved on to the idea that we need to change the language. It's not about meeting because it conjures up too much preconceived ideas. So that you then took us, Ilke, again, you took us into the idea of transcripts and exploration of transcripts and the use of AI to analyze transcripts, summarize transcripts, and then create dynamic links back into the transcript if the summaries don't fully make sense to us. And that's all really valuable material. But this need to shift our thinking on the concept of meeting, and that conjured up the idea of a before, a during, and an after. Central to all of that is this idea that as human beings, we want to get together. But sometimes a big challenge that we have is trying to decipher all of the inputs that are taking place during our get-togethers. So where AI may become a real partner is in the preparation piece, as Ilke identified early on, where it could help us prepare agendas. In the meeting piece, where it can help us to dynamically either create visuals. Karen, you made that point, and there's a real visual out of that, the idea of mind maps and dynamically representing the conversation as it's happening. And then there's the idea of doing summaries after the event with links back into the transcripts to bring us into the full flow if that was necessary. Ilke, can I link that back to the visual that you gave us of conversation, the organization conversation being a river? I called it a river of discourse in my own meeting research, and that islands or meetings are islands within that conversation flow or that river of discourse within organizations. All of that was leading us to say, so what is the precise role that AI can fulfill in the context of getting together for whatever purpose? But that equally brought us into the area of, and I'll pick a number of words that we used. We talked about exploration, creativity, analysis, imagination, emotion. And I won't say we concluded, but I think we explored the idea that, well, AI isn't emotional. It doesn't have emotion. It gives us bland summary, but it doesn't infuse our engagements with passion, with commitment, with diversity, imagination, and stuff. So perhaps our biggest challenge with using AI in pursuit of supporting our get-togethers is to first define what it's meant to do to augment our natural and inherent human need, which is to get together and be emotional, be explorative, be inquisitive, all of the things that AI doesn't seem to be particularly good at. And we just need to figure out before we go too far forward with AI to say, what is it good at, and keep it doing what it's good at. And don't let it try and replace the bit that people are not only good at, we are the only ones capable of being emotional, sensitive, explorative, and so on. And maybe out of this conversation, we might not have redefined what our meetings should be, but maybe we've just put a mark on the ground to say, well, let's not engage AI too much more until we very clearly decide what is the boundary for it? How can it add value rather than being in awe of what it can do that we can't do? But let's not forget what we can do that it can't do.
That's amazing.
I do, except for that I don't know if we should. I think the way you framed it was first figure it out and then start using. I actually think on that. No, a lot of the things that we were talking about, I don't know what it's going to be like in years, what a meeting will be. Suggesting, and I really liked your point about mindset. I think it's the mindset that you bring to it and the intentionality. I think it's if you without knowing how it's going to help, you're doing that